Are you searching for answers? Discover your true identity. Stay tuned to Shalom World.
When I was suspecting I was pregnant, I knew I couldn't go to a doctor because it would have to have parental consent, and abortion clinics were offering free pregnancy testing. I just remember when the test came back positive, it was like, oh my God, it was like the world just stopped. It's like, where do I go from here?
My first reaction was kind of numbness and fear. I was already 18 and she was a minor. So quite frankly, there was legal ramifications. There was also the fact that regardless, there was a child. I didn't know how or this was going to work out, how I could support a child. I was still in school.
The main thing I was crying, not so much because I was pregnant, but how am I going to tell my parents about this? Especially at the age of 14 when they had no clue that I was sexually active or anything like that. So I knew this was going to be so monumental and, raise such havoc. It was like, oh my goodness. So at that point, when I was crying quite loudly, the abortion worker came out and she came back with, well, you don't have to tell your parents. They don't need to find out.
But I didn't even really think about abortion at that point. I don't know why. We were at an abortion clinic, but that wasn't either of our thoughts at the point.
It was such a hard sell, and I know that that's part of their thing is to go with your fear. So she sensed a lot of fear, and she assured me that, the fear was legit and there's something we can do about this. When we talked and things like that, I decided to terminate because it seemed like the only option, because I couldn't see how I could tell my parents, and I really didn't have anybody in my family that I thought I was close enough that I could talk to. I just remember the night before I had the abortion, I was talking to my soon-to-be dead child, which is always hard to say, but say that I really wish that I could keep him or her, because it had nothing to do with not wanting a child, even at that age.
I felt we would get back to the way it was before. She was, pretty much the same too. I noticed that she was sadder and more depressed to some degree, but I know that, for myself, I know that a weight had been lifted at the time. I didn't have a fully conscious realization of what I'd done or what we had done. We did get back together right away. We didn't break up. We didn't put any time between us. We continued to see each other.
We hadn't really taken any precautions, but just carried on our life same as, so it was no surprise that I became pregnant again. And it may sound crazy because now I'm 15, but there was some part of me that was like, I had life again. I gave a life that I never wanted to up. So there was some part that was actually like, okay, I have a baby again, and this one I'm not going to let go of.
Again, I just graduated already, but I didn't have a very good job. So it crossed my mind, but I turned to her and, right away she said no. So I supported it because I didn't want to do it again. I knew that, but I just didn't know what we were going to do. So at this point, I was leaving it up to God and her. And
this time it was like there was no way was I going to do that again. This is my child, even though I'm a child having a child, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that baby gets here and protected. I went to the same clinic, actually. And when they said it's positive, I walked out, I didn't cry out the elevator, and it's like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but, I'm going to have this baby.
In 1973, I was working as an account executive for a public relations firm in Chicago. The Supreme Court of the United States had made abortion legal for the full term of pregnancy. I couldn't get that off my mind. I thought this will destroy a country, to take away the right to life of a whole class of people. We were all unborn children at one time. I wanted to get the abortion ads out of the newspapers. The newspaper carried dozens and dozens of abortion ads. It was a business. And so I went to the different papers and tried to talk them into stopping the ads. And I took two of the admin out for lunch. And in the middle of lunch, I pulled out the pictures of aborted babies. I threw them right in the middle of the table. And I said, this is what you're selling. Well, these two men were both Catholics, and they knew abortion was wrong, but they hadn't seen it graphically like that. And so before the meal was finished, they said, we'll do something for you. Well, I said, I want the ads removed. Well, apparently, nobody back at the ad department would listen to that because this full page of ads brought in a lot of revenue. So they told me what they would do is give me a free ad, that whenever the abortion ads ran, there would be an ad that I could put in, and I could say anything I wanted to and put my phone number.
There was an ad, and it says abortion alternatives. And I had seen that after I had the first abortion, or else I might have called that number. And I called and I explained to this woman, who ended up being Laura, that I'm pregnant, I don't want to have an abortion, and I don't know how I'm going to tell my parents.
She called and she was very nervous. She was very upset. And she asked me if I would help her tell her mother that she was pregnant. And she did not want an abortion for that child. She wanted help. She wanted help having her baby. So I told her I would come to her house and help her tell her mother. I said, but you have to tell your mother. And so on a Sunday, I went to the house and I knocked on the door and I said to her mother, your daughter Maureen has contacted our organization about a problem she has. There was Maureen, little redhead with freckles, 15 years old. And I looked at Maureen and I said, tell her, Maureen, because I said I'd be there to support her, but I wanted her to tell her mother. She goes, Mom, I'm pregnant. Just like that. She just blurted it right out. And her mother just went,
oh my gosh, instant hysteria for my mom, and my dad. I mean, it was like such a shock. She called my godparents to come get me out of the house. And, I was kind of like, it was, I couldn't even remember everything. But I mean, Laura, it was, she stood there for all of it, even when all the relatives came and suggested abortion and things like that. And she said, no, abortion's not the answer here.
I just said to her mother, well, you can be very proud of your daughter because she did not seek an abortion. She sought help from the right to life people, the right people that would help her to carry the baby to term. And I said, that is something very admirable about her decision on this pregnancy. She was strong in her beliefs. She was strong in her belief that that is a child, that is not a blob of tissue like the abortion clinics tell the girls. And Maureen did not believe that. She knew she was carrying a child, and she did not want to harm that child. She was committed to that child. She knew herself, and she knew what the truth was, and she wanted to do what was right.
My aunt did take me because my mom wanted me out of the house. And I didn't know for how long of a time. I'm thinking maybe months or whatever. And the first thing she did when I came out of the car with my daughter, she took the baby from me and she told me she was sorry. And then she took for months and months, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
After the baby was born, that's when, again, Maureen and I went and we had the baby baptized. This is when my faith started to grow again, and especially, my desire to, be with the Catholic Church. It was just so neat to kind of be back in there for the right reasons, I had our own family now.
It was a backyard wedding. Actually, my parents weren't going to let me get married. Or my mother was, told Paul, because we said we're going to get married and things like that. It was a sense of relief too. It's like, okay, I'm out of the house. I'm going to start this new. Now I'm in charge. Basically, even though I was 16 years old, I'm now have the adult role, and I just went with it extremely mature. You would not think that I was a 16-year-old having a baby. I wasn't like, oh my gosh, please help me. I had it all set up.
Financially, we struggled. We had our issues. We were first-time parents, very young. Maureen knew a lot internally, just by herself, how to take care of a child. But for myself, I had no clue. And our own relationship, we had to work on that, make sure that stayed fresh.
I handled it. I did everything like everybody else would. And it wasn't until when things would come up like music or whatever, to my more times because it was basically my adolescence, and it was like, oh gosh, I remember Carefree Days and things like that, but and those were no more, but I never regretted.
I wanted to take care of my family. I did take a lot of pride in that. The one thing my dad did do is take care of us, and he struggled too, but I knew that that's what I wanted to do. I was very happy to take on that role in that sense. I knew that it was a very important role for the father, the husband, to be there, to support financially, emotionally, to be there. Maureen was very good with that. To make sure that she supported my husbandry.
Maureen ended up being a fabulous mother in spite of the suffering that she had because of the prior abortion, which women need to know. There's so much psychological suffering following abortion, which Maureen endured with her pregnancy. She ended up having 4 children after the baby I helped her with, but she couldn't get that abortion off her mind.
I found out that Maureen was going through postpartum depression. I didn't even know that that's what it was called, so to speak, but I knew that she was having a lot of anxiety, especially after our last daughter was born. She really had a lot of anxiety. She stopped driving. Maureen had a lot of depression. She talked about worrying about killing the children.
I had a rosary wrapped around my hand. I prayed and prayed because I would hear in my head, you're going to kill your children. You're going to kill your children, especially the younger one, because she really didn't have any problems until she came along. And I even went to the fact of having my husband take the knives out of the house because I was afraid.
But eventually we knew we had to get some professional help. As we struggled with the postpartum depression, and we did go to many different spiritual healings, we also given the name of a priest at Marytown, and we went there, and this priest was very helpful. And we realized now that it wasn't just postpartum, but it was post-abortive. He really knew how to reach into our hearts to help us find the healing. And much of it was through, first off, giving a name to our beautiful daughter that we had aborted. So this was very important for us, part of the healing, and we didn't know that. To identify the child as a person.
I didn't know how you go to confession until something that major. So I sent my husband to confession, and Paul came home and he said, the priest wants to meet with you. So the two of us met with the priest. He gave us absolution, and it just was such a weight lifted.
God is always waiting through his merciful heart, through his merciful love, to reconcile us to himself, especially in the sacrament of confession. And the Deitches have been a very good example of that.
I just feel that the Lord had plans for me, in spite of the mistakes I did and things like that, that he was going to bring me to my heart's desire.
I gave the Deitches the opportunity to be able to talk to our parishioners, especially our confirmation students, about the holiness of life, because I believe that the experience they went through when they were younger and how they dealt with the situation can be of great help to our present-day young people, and it can also teach adults who are listening as well, such as the parents, perhaps how to better understand if their daughter or their son finds herself or himself in a situation like that.
I know there's so many kids that are sexually active at a very young age. So my thing is to get them, even though I'm older now, I'm still relatable. And which is why I bring a picture of my husband and I at that age to say, look, we're just like you. I don't want to see anybody go down that path.
And we want people to know our story if it helps. I mean, they don't want to do the same things we did. I mean, we have a wonderful marriage and wonderful children now, but that's through God's grace. But there was a lot of heartache because of it. So you can still, if you can avoid the heartache and still get to the beautiful family without that situation, that's what we want to prevent.
As I was working for the church, there came like something, I don't think it was an email, I think it was an actual letter saying, we're trying to get people to go to the March for Life. And I was like so excited. It's like, okay, this is me. I want to do this or whatever. I just kind of, did all I can with, pro-life without stating, why I'm so pro-life especially. And when I ended up giving up church work to be a granny nanny, I call it, you're watching my grandchildren, I knew this was my opportunity.
Maureen and I met at our parish, St. Ansgar Parish in Hanover Park, when we were teaching CCD. She started to be very involved in a pro-life movement, arranging trips to the March for Life in Washington, D.C. And at that March for Life, I began to understand why Maureen was so involved and so on fire for the March for Life. Coming back from the March for Life, I did get excited about it, and then my husband and I became part of Maureen's pro-life committee at church. And we did a lot of work with the young people, trying to get them involved and letting them know what activities were going on.
I want action from people. I want to get people out to the abortion clinics, out to the prayer vigils, out to the Face the Truth tours, counseling women at the clinics, finding people that are thinking about abortion.
With the pro-life movement, for many years, I've actually been involved with going down to the rallies. And just this past year, I found out that one of the priests here, one of the Franciscans, was going down to an abortion clinic and praying every Saturday morning with a small group of people. And so I approached him and asked him, I'd like to join your group, because it's something that's always been very dear to my heart. We used to leave at 6 in the morning and get there about 6:45. Now we leave at 5 in the morning and get there at 5:45, because the women come in very early for their abortions. They come in, they're prepped for them, before the doctors get there. And so they get there early and don't want to be seen. And, So we get there early to just be out there and have our presence known. We stand out there and we pray our rosaries and we bring this great big divine mercy banner, because we want them to know that there is healing and mercy involved in this. We're not there condemning, we're there praying. Even though we're not able to talk to these women, they see us. And the power of prayer is very powerful. It changes people's hearts. And, when we're out there praying, they feel that, they know that. We just hope, that we can prevent, even if it's just one, save one life. And what we have found when we've been out there is some of these women, they'll go in and they'll see us and they're in there for a short time and they'll come back out, with their husband or boyfriend or whoever they're with, sometimes their mother. And they'll get in the car and leave. And we know that they have changed their mind, It's before the doctors even get there. And so we know that they've had a change of heart, and we attribute that all to the power of prayer.
For people who find themselves in the same predicament as Maureen and Paul, always listen to your conscience, because there is such a thing that sometimes we forget in modern times. It is called the natural law. And the natural law is written in our hearts by God. And it is the same as the commandments. To listen to your conscience, even if you're not a Catholic, you will find there in the silence of your heart that life is sacred. And if you're Catholic, you have to take into account what Christ has taught, what Mother Church teaches, despite of whatever the world is saying.
Our natural object of the mind is the truth. We're not happy when we're telling a lie, when we're living a lie. People who have abortion are lying to themselves, and they have to doctor it up and pretend life doesn't begin till a certain period in the pregnancy, or that they have a right to their body, which allows them a right not to be pregnant. If they're pregnant, they have a baby, and that baby has rights, and that's the right to life, and that's one of the greatest rights we have. When he gives us children, we are to bring them up believing in him and trying to live good lives and so on, and to spend eternity with him, worshiping him in heaven and being joyful.
I would say that there are alternatives, that God loves them very much. If they can't afford, a lot of times this comes down to, people thinking that they can't afford a child, or they're too young, and whatever the reason may be, that there are plenty of institutions out there to help them get through this process. But if they are to go through with the abortion, even though they might feel that this solves their problems now, it's only going to cause more problems down the road. And so I would tell them to turn to prayer, to pray to Our Lady. Our Lady carried Jesus for 9 months. Pray to her. She's your mother. She'll wrap her mantle around you, and she'll intercede on your behalf to give you the peace that you need to go forward with your pregnancy.
We still will have to fight because the states will make laws. There will be meccas for abortion like New York City and Chicago and probably San Francisco and so Los Angeles. There'll still be abortions, but wherever we have an opportunity, we try to talk a woman into having the baby and either raising it herself or put it up for adoption, but let the baby live.
Do not let fear dictate your future. I mean, first of all, fear is not of God, and there are people there, more things now than there was even back in my day. And the fact, and it's something you'll regret. You can't take it back. Once you've done it, it's done. There's no you can't make up for this type of mistake. You will always remember that you had a child. Even if you have other children like I did or whatever, it did not put her on the side.
I would like to tell any young man or any age man that this is not what you want to do. This child is yours as much as it is the woman's, and you should want that child because that child is part of you. And it's a gift from God, as is all life. And you don't want to be the one to take that life away. I can testify that every child is not a burden. They are a joy and a gift.
who's used media a lot in evangelization, so I believe in the importance of Catholic radio, Catholic TV, Catholics using the new media. Can I encourage everyone to watch Shalom TV? I think it's a great vehicle of evangelization. And God bless all of you.